All right, welcome back to the broadcast. In case you're just joining us, we are talking about the insecurity situation in the north, courtesy of the banditry problem, and of course what the government has been able to do with regards to the security operation there. Now, on Sunday, the Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki was in Samburu County and spoke about the government is going into this operation with a lot of information, crucial information that is guiding the interventions they're putting in place in the region. This is what he said.
I've conclusively established and zeroed on the key suspects in terms of those who have been commanding the terror gangs in this area. We have their names, we have their profiles, and we are going for them. We have also identified the spiritual leaders who have been giving blessings to raiders and murderers before they go to commit their crimes. As we speak, one of them is in custody and will be arraigned in court anytime from now.
All right, so that is Professor Kithure Kindiki, the Interior Cabinet Secretary there, talking about how this seems to be a well-orchestrated plan. And I see your body language, Honorable Lotte. I was actually coming to you because you understand your terrain, you understand your region and what happens. I don't know, this seems to be, from what the CS is suggesting, a well-orchestrated network of not just the bandits. They are not operating sort of like in a vacuum, but he's suggesting that there is something that actually is planned, and they even get blessings, he suggests, from religious leaders.
Spiritual leaders.
Yeah. Talk to us about what is, first of all, your reaction to what he's suggesting?
With a lot of respect to the Cabinet Secretary, also following what he said earlier, I think this kind of reactionary utterances by the Cabinet Secretary here now and the Cabinet Secretaries of before is actually the big problem. One, the Cabinet Secretary has actually alluded to something that is very critical. If the Cabinet Secretary says that he's got the intelligence of who those people are, why punish the entire population? Why move people? Just go for these persons, take them, and butcher them, instead of allowing the whole people to suffer. So for me, that is a very reactionary, non-thought-through process. Yesterday, I was privileged to watch Senator Manzo, who is neither a pastoralist and neither comes from the North Rift. This is what he said yesterday here in the studio. He said there is one big problem about the North. And the problem is that the people in the North have been marginalized to the levels where they are not even in the security system. How do you get intelligence, for example, from West Pokot, when you do not have a Pokot person within your system, or Turkana, or Samburu, or whatever? So you send somebody from wherever who does not even understand the language to come and gather intelligence. And I remember when we were with the Deputy President, this was actually raised. And we said, the people that they call the intelligence officer go and chest thump within the towns and tell people, you know, we are the ones that gather intelligence. So you need to know us. Intelligence is not gathered that way. Because if the Cabinet Secretary was true to his words, I do not believe that he was going to zone places and call them bandit zone. He will have picked the bandits and taken them in. The fact that that has not happened basically tells you that the Cabinet Secretary is blowing hot hair. That is one.
But Mheshimiwa, these bandits, can they afford to operate on their own? Where are they getting the money? Where are they getting the firearms? Where are they getting their protection? Can they actually do this alone? I'm just asking.
Well, I think if we go to the history of banditry, these are communities that are pastoralist communities that have actually lived through times. And you can actually see this thing evolving from the traditional cut raids to something else. I do not think it is something that has been muted of late and then it's become sophisticated. But I think it is actually going through a metamorphosis process. So I do not, by this time, personally believe that the bandits are actually protected. I do not believe so. If it was, then the intelligence will come that out, and the people protecting them need to come out. I just believe that these are people that have been left by governments to fend for themselves and to protect themselves. There are no water in this region. If you actually look at the entire north, the big water dams are not done there, and yet that is the most deserving places. And so people fight on water, people fight about pasture, people fight about their social life and economic life. So it's basically they have been left onto their own to survive onto their own. They are actually not part of Kenya. What Natembeya, the provincial commissioner, who is now the governor of Trans Nzoia, said when he was here, he said one thing, and I think it is important for us as political leaders to also take that cue, that it is something different, and it is going to be hypocritical for us to believe that there is one community that is innocent amongst these people. All these communities are actually aggressors. All these communities are actually victims. Okay. So if we take it from that perspective and then we say, can we sit down and start not throwing blames? Because if we start throwing blames, everybody can be able to say, like he said, everybody can be able to say, this belongs to me, this does not belong to me, this belongs to him, this does not belong to him. Okay. Because what my sister said that there are places, they are expansionists. And I want to say, that might not be the direction we want to go. Why? Because, one, the issue of pastoralism is not on a straightforward borderline. Pastoralists move from one point to another one. And so I do not really think that we want to go into the issues to say there are people who want to expand. Okay. Because pastoralists move, and that is the nature of pastoralism. That's why we see Maasai's cows grazing in the city even now. It's not that because they belong to Nairobi or they own Nairobi. The issue of border between the Pokots and Turkana, for example, was taken to the courts in the year 2016, and the courts ruled on the border. And I think that was solved at that point. Okay. We cannot be able to say that is what is causing insecurity, because if that was it, then these cat rustling will have not been there during the colonial time when there were no borders. So that is not the reason. Okay, thank you.
Ikala, I come to you. When is the right time then, or when is time ripe for a shift in terms of viewing these areas as from the perspective of security, and instead shift the focus to employment, for example, development, equality, and marginalization, exclusion of lack of access to basic amenities, for example, education centers and hospitals? I mean, is that the way, despite the security operation which is ongoing?
I think the continued blame between pastoralism and lack of amenities is people keep using that. Just because we are pastoralists doesn't mean we don't want to go to school, doesn't mean we don't want access to economic activities and others. Pastoralists normally sell their livestock when and if they need to sell their livestock. However, the government, but mostly generally Kenyans, try to throw these words as, because they're pastoralists, we should all be farmers. And I remember the former PS of Internal Security said, turn all of them into farmers. Because the issue here, as Honorable Ngitit has said, is more than, and I might disagree with Honorable Lotte on the issue of expansionism, and it's a land issue. And once we say it's a land and territorial issue, it goes all the way to Laikipia. Land and territory becomes the issue. And once we start to talk about it and say, let's resolve this, we do not say people should not move. And it's the same thing even with the Maasai. We don't say people should not move. What we say is we've got to recognize that these are lands and territories of a particular community. And so the process, and you said colonial times, the process of seeking access to pasture and water is this way, that people are informed, that the chief and the elders of a particular place are informed, and the duration of time that people can access the grazing and water and pasture. And because of that access of water and pasture means that they can access health facilities, access to education and water as neighboring communities. So I think it is important to put that into context. But going back to the issue of, again, the operation within this context, when is right, when is not right, you cannot, and when retired captain talks about operation, we've had these operations. I lived in a household where we were part of operations. But we keep doing operation get out, get in, get out. Does it mean that the people of the north are not entitled to security throughout? We see policemen in Kilimani Everywhere, every corner right now, you'll find 2, 3 policemen. Why can't we get the same access to security apparatus, security services equal to other parts of the country? So it is not fly in, fly out, drive in right now. Look at, if you can actually see the equipment that is being carried north, it will be used for 2 weeks, it will come back. Does it mean that the security teams in the north who are resident there are not entitled to good equipment to provide the necessary security to the rest of the pastoralists?
And just to pick it from there, because it seems like you're suggesting there is no sustained security in the area.
Yes.
And my question then would be, how do we shift from the security operation to finding, which we agree is not sustainable, to finding a long-lasting solution? You talked about it's a land issue. In another conversation, they say it's a marginalization issue. Some say it's culture. So what's the problem really? What are the drivers of banditry for us to get like the true solution to it? Because this reactive approach of installing security officers in each and every corner cannot be, is not viable, it's not even sustainable. So what is the real problem?
I think you've got to look at it from different lenses. So it's a security issue, there is a land issue, because then the triggers, the various variables around it, because of people being marginalized, so then the places, right now you have to use such high-end equipment to access certain places. Most of that equipment won't even go to those places. So it means that's why you're seeing the security is standing in one place and throwing a bomb very far, because there is no road to get to those areas. So once you deny even the security roads, the necessary support system, and it was not only security roads, because a lot of these areas, I remember Honorable Kamama one time talking about places like Kapedo before did not have roads, but then they started to be opened up, and so business starts to grow, people start to reside there, and the place becomes habitable. So I think it's looking at it at a multifaceted angle, where you're looking at security, you're looking at marginalization, you're looking at a real conversation around what are the customary claims of lands and territories that are now taken away from people, but a full, a real long-term thought process that is inclusive and is not about someone chest thumping, because you can chest thump from morning till evening, but then at the end of the day you leave.
Just to finish up on this, and when we talk about issues of inaccessibility and you talk about the road network, that is a government responsibility. But again, under the devolved system of governance, you look at, for example, the county of Turkana in this context. It's only Nairobi that gets a higher allocation than Turkana, the money coming from the exchequer. Then where is the local leadership here? Because the idea was the constitution envisages power devolution from the center and resources so that people can get empowered, so that people can get access to services. Does it then mean that it's also failure on the part of the local leadership, 13 years under devolution, and a case of self-marginalization by the local leadership across these areas that I've cited of the disturbed counties like Kipia, Samburu, Turkana, West Pokot, and Elgeyo Marakwet?
I think it takes to both levels of government to work on things like road, because you realize that certain roads, you're told this is a county road, this is a national road. When it's two counties coming together, who then decides which road to you can't build your road and leave it halfway and then leave the other side. So I think that needs collective leadership, but also national government has to give leadership in terms of some of this area, something like roads. Because if you're looking at a road that's coming from Samburu, Baragoi to Kapedo, you're looking at from Marigat to Kapedo, you're looking at various, from West Pokot all the way this way. You're looking at areas that need a very collective way of thinking, but also national government has always taken the lead in a lot of these areas. In fact, I think resources have been allocated to finish up these roads. What is then the hindrance is what we don't understand, but I know there are budget lines that were already provided to create a lot of these roads by national government.
I would just like Honorable Ngitit also to just respond to that, because part of why people elect you leaders is that you go for that slice of the cake and bring it to them, because if you wait for it to come, it may never come. So that's why there is devolution. That's why there are leaders who are supposed to aggressively push for their people to get the slice of that cake. And if that cake means getting roads, getting schools, getting awareness, employment, and even pushing for them to get slots in some of the areas such as the security sector, that is what the people need. So by installing you leaders there, do you then say that perhaps there is lapse, there is failure? If they are not seeing results, they are not feeling like they're part of this country, they still feel that they are marginalized? Is it failure on the local leadership or the national government? Who is to blame in this?
Okay. The truth is, devolution has transformed Lodwar or Turkana, for that case. If you went there before devolution and you go there today, you will see the difference. But this money, you say, we come second after Nairobi. We used to interact with the people who work with the county government. They would tell you the frustrations they go through in this if-miss thing. At times, they cannot access that money. The money is in the system, yes. It is held there until it goes back to the treasury. And then later on, you see in the newspapers, unspent billions. Turkana did not spend 4 billion. Turkana did not spend 5 billion. There's a technical issue again on the treasury issues, how they release this money and all that. So the 11 billion Turkana is being allocated to, we've not been using them as such, using that money as such. It has been going back to the treasury at times. Then secondly... Do
you mean, Honorable, that... I mean, when the exchequer allocates the money, it has to trickle down. After all, that money has to be utilized. Do you then mean that the allocation was just on paperwork, nothing practical?
Yes, at times. I've never worked with the county government, but I've been raising such questions with them. Like, we have huge allocation. Why are we living this life? And then they will tell you some of this money can be 4 billion in the system, but you cannot access the 4 billion at times. So you get, so it goes back to the treasury. So if now we were to account...
Is it then a case of inaccessibility of the money or
yes,
misuse of the money?
There is inaccessibility. Then there is a little percentage of misuse when it comes out. But there is the inaccessibility in the huge part. Yeah, they don't access that money. Some of it goes back. In fact, the huge part of it goes back. And then they cite technicalities like the absorption rate, those things. I'm not a treasury person. So I'm in disagreement with this idea of saying the reason of banditry in the north is marginalization. Now, my brother, do you want to tell me if you've been marginalized, am I the one who has marginalized you? Do you have to come to raid my cattle so that you compensate your marginalization? It is not marginalization. I know we will do 1,000 or 1,000,000 operations in this country, in that part, but you will come back to know it is about land. And it is not about cattle rustling, the usual one. Like, if it was, usually when we raid, there is a unit in the security called ASTU, anti-stock, yes, that one. They normally follow this livestock. They return it back. But of late, whenever it is raided, you will not return even one. And they will literally get the bandits, get into their homes, but that livestock is not there. So it's like a business. Whenever it's raided, there are lorries standby, waiting for that livestock. Then it will end up here in these slaughterhouses in Nairobi. It will end up in Kenya Meat Commission. So it's a huge business. It's not just the things you people think. It is about business on the livestock issue, on the livestock, and then it is about land. It is about expansionism. Because, okay, we are pastoralists. At the moment, Turkanas are in Uganda. They are in Ethiopia. But at long run, they will not claim the land of Ethiopia to be theirs. They will not post chiefs in Ethiopia. They will not post chiefs in Uganda. They are going there purposely to graze, and they will come back. But our neighbors, whenever they come to graze on our land, they come with chiefs, they come with local elders, and then at long run, that place will become their land. Okay. That is what has been happening. We've lost land to them. Okay. And the Turkana, you people are saying, we are told, we know Turkana is 77,000 kilometers square. That is what we know. But we are now told whenever we Google, we get it is, I don't know, 66,000, CG 60 what. We don't know those things. We know 77 square thousand kilometers.
And that is subject to a determination by
yes.
the
land has to be introduced. Okay. Land has to be looked into.
Thank you.
Yes.
Institutions are concerned in government that look into the boundaries that divide the country into the devolved units that we have. Captain, I come to you. The Interior CS points to people who he says are financiers, sympathizers, and a network including spiritual leaders who are supporting the cause of the banditry. If this is available to the government, then what's the point of such huge-scale police military operation? Why not flush them out and hold them before courts of law so that they are charged for the crimes that they are supporting?
Thank you very much. While I don't speak for the minister or the CS, it is unfortunate that this type of claims have been made by previous cabinet secretaries on different issues. And it would be, in fact, vital for such statements made by cabinet secretaries or people in position to be followed with action. It is unfortunate, as Mheshimiwa has alluded to, when you preempt your investigations before even you conduct real investigations. The reality is we have first to accept that the problem exists. And this problem is caused by a number of factors. We have the intelligence arm of the government that is supposed to get or pinpoint the reality on the ground. What is mainly boundary issues can be resolved by the provincial administration and at the national government level. But once the security situation escalates to that level, where bandits now challenge the security services and make the area a no-go zone, first we have to silence the guns. Mm-hmm. I will not exonerate the government from blame. Certainly, they have a role in this particular issue, because you can see of a situation where in a certain county, incident after incidents are happening and nothing tangible is done by the local administration. The same county commissioner is in place, incidents are happening, livestock is stolen and never recovered, and the man or the woman in charge of the county security committees is still in position. That is abating a crime by itself. If you cannot perform the job, then you should leave that place and go to a department where you can be on a desk writing reports. If you are taken to Turkana County as a county commissioner, and incidents are happening by the day, and no recovery of livestock, no report of who is committing this particular crime, because intelligence must come from the grassroots. It's bottom up.
Okay.
But fortunately, the president has made, or this government has made this issue, security in that region, a priority. What we are only debating is the process. This has been done by the colonial governments, beating up the Turkanas, the Pokot, the Somalis, and all the nomads in their own way. And they left these people with the guns, still raiding each other. Moi came, Kenyatta came, did the same thing, burnt places, conducted operations, and similar things. But he left with these people with the arms and issues. Mm-hmm. Moi, the same thing. If you can recall the number of operations under Moi's government, you lose count.
What seems to be the problem?
So the problem is...
why are we not coming out of it?
Now here is the issue. The president has taken it personal to resolve this issue once and for all.
So there is more commitment with the current government than this?
Yes, there is a real commitment, because at the topmost level of the government, he has personally declared that he will see to it that this thing is eradicated by whatever means. But first, before we do anything, we must silence the guns. We must not have alternative arms roaming around.
Okay.
Mheshimiwa Lote, I know you have something to add, but just explain something to me. This bandits, because now people have been asked to move to safer areas. I'm trying to imagine, will the bandits stay and wait for the bombs to come and all that? How do we separate a bandit and an innocent person? The approach on how this security operation is being done and even how it is announced and revealed. Will the government find these bandits in some place to shoot them, or how do you separate?
Sorry to say, but I think the issue of military operation for West Pokot County, this was the 29th military operation. Mm. There was a very brutal military operation in 1984 called the Nyundo operation. And the security, like everybody else has said, the security operators will come. After 2 weeks, they'll come back to Nairobi with the huge alliances. I always have a problem with the approach of government, because today, when government is asked to build a road, to build a school, to build a church, the government will tell you there is no resources. But when there are issues to deal with banditry, the government will get resources. And I believe if you look at the number of military people that are there, including the allowances, the fuel and everything, I believe they're spending millions of shillings, tens, thousands, hundreds of millions per day. And they will do that in terms of their allowances. Sometimes we actually imagine this security situation is allowed to continue by the military or the government so that they can draw allowances, because that has become their minefield. Why can't they decisively take this money and build a structure? We cannot reinvent the wheel, and it is important that we look at the wheel the way it was invented. The Karamoja region in Uganda was extremely volatile before Museveni came in, actually extremely volatile. When Museveni came in, he actually looked at the whole situation and did a Marshall Plan. And this Marshall Plan actually saved the whole area, the whole Karamoja, where my sister said the Turkanas have moved to. The Pokots have also moved to Karamoja now to graze their livestock. And it is a relatively peaceful environment compared to Kenya. Why? Because Museveni actually mopped out the guns in a very technical manner. I've actually alluded that here before. I can say it again and again and again. But nobody wants to. The Kenya military wants to use force. And the reason why they will always fail, they need to call the leaders. They need to learn from what others have done. Museveni actually created a ministry in the national government of Uganda called the Karamoja Affair. And because it was very pertinent to him, the wife, Janet Museveni, was made the minister for that affair. And there were a lot of development that took place in that place. If you look at the Moi military operation in West Pokot, in Kacheliba, for example, where I come from and represent, a lot of brutal force has been used, but there is no tangible results that can be talked about. The only tangible thing you can talk about is the deaths and the destructions that come with it. Kibaki came with what we call Jenga Jamii, a military operation that came with a very different view. And the reason why, if you look at the areas that have been zoned by the cabinet secretary now, Kacheliba is not part of it. And yet Kacheliba was one of the times considered as a very hot spot. Why? Kibaki came with a plan, and the military came with a human face. The military will provide water, the military will go to school and teach, the military will provide medical camps, the military vehicles were used by communities and they will go from one community to another to play. And we had a lot of pastors coming out of that. And so I saw a lot of development coming up. I want to a little bit disagree with what my sister said. That is not about marginalization. The bandits, for your information, are people that have not gone beyond standard 8. If the minister will one of the days bring them up here. The people that have gone to school are not bandits because they have found an alternative means of livelihoods. The children that are actually taking care of livestock now are a lot of small children, 12, 15 years, who are denied opportunities of going to school. What else are they growing into? They're growing into adoring the cow. They're going into an aspect of thinking the cow is everything. Okay. And so they can kill because of the cow. That is their God, so to say. But if they are given opportunities like any other Kenyans, I got an opportunity. If probably I didn't get an opportunity, probably I will be a bandit and a cash rustler. But because I got an opportunity, that is not my direction, and that is the direction that I do not want anybody from Kacheliba constituency to be in. So I think in terms of development, the government needs to borrow a leaf from the Uganda government. The government needs to borrow a leaf from what Museveni, what Kibaki, President Kibaki, the former retired, late President Kibaki did to this area. If the government goes in that direction without just stamping and coming with military power and firepower, they're going to change things. Okay, and let's hear, Mikel Ikala, I'll come to you, because the CS Defense, Eden Duale, when he appeared before the Foreign Defense and Intelligence Committee, will be having a soundbite shortly, alluded to the fact that the military will take over in the event the current security operation will burden the police, which is the first layer of command in terms of what's happening at the moment in the 6 counties. Let's hear what he said in Parliament over the military taking over in the event this becomes a complex matter.
Now, this is the cancer that could hurt our country very badly.
We apologize for the mix-up. It ought to have been the CS Defense, not Interior. That's Eden Duale, and here is what he said before the same parliamentary committee.
If and when we feel the situation requires now the Kenya Defense Forces to take up the mantle, remove other security agencies, take the leadership, then we will now do what the Constitution and the Act requires.
Okay, Ikal, that's the language. I mean, militarization.
Yes.
It never worked. America failed after 21 years in Afghanistan, so it happened in Iraq. I mean, is the language proper from the government to the people of these 6 disturbed and dangerous counties as termed by the Interior CS Professor Kithure Kindiki? And is militarization the solution?
You know, when CS Duale says, if we feel, who's we? If then the people themselves are not being included in that discussion. I think we are a democratic country, and so the process and public participation is enshrined in the same constitution that he refers to. And so the participation of citizens and the leadership is critical to this process. And militarization, and many people refer to Karamoja. I mean, that's a longer story, but it's not that it has changed things in Karamoja. The militarization itself is one of the biggest problems in Karamoja. After a while, it was good process, the UPDF was working, but then when militarization takes over, then again, the same military, as Natembeya mentioned, become a part of the problem, where they now institutionalize processes that enable them benefit from the crisis. And so assuming that military itself is the saint that is coming to take care of everything is a very bad assumption, because we've seen that same military being part of the problem in many other places, like what has been mentioned by MP Lotte of Karamoja. So the language of militarization itself is problematic. The fact that public participation, even if not of the people themselves, but of the representatives of the people, is a very critical part that the CS needs to take into account, and to recognize that military hasn't worked. I give an example. On the 14th of March, or 14th of February, 7,974 shots were stolen from one place in Lokwamosing, where everybody had gone during the dry season. You have to explain to me how 7,000 shots disappear if they are not supported by an institution, state institution, because there is no way just citizens can provide the necessary support to move these animals from one place to another. We know there is an order that animals do not move beyond 6 p.m. It's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you're moving a truck of livestock, you've got to be able to show that these are your animals. You've got the necessary permits and orders. So how 7,974 shots disappear, and you want to tell me there was no state presence or state support? Then it's not only about the political figures who are financing this thing, but also state support. And so that militarization that CS is talking about itself is part of the problem, because these areas where the animals moved through is where there's a military camp, there is ASTU, there is the necessary military operations and these are places where these animals pass through. So militarization is not a solution, and assuming that the military themselves, at a time when Natembeya has indicated that usually officers are not well taken care of, the systems are not working for them, then they then create a new economy through a militarization process.
Captain, just on the same, what then would you say has been the impact of this security operation? Because I'm trying to imagine right now, even the bandits themselves know that something is happening that is not business as usual, and they can't just be sitting and waiting. There is something that they're also doing on their part. How would you describe the progress that has been achieved, and whether this can be sustained? Now we are talking about phase 2. There could be a phase 3. Was it on Sunday, the Deputy President also was on record saying that it could take even as much as 2 years, 3 years, depending on how the government will assess how much time is needed until the situation is toned down. So how can this be sustained, you know?
First, let me follow up on the statement by Honorable Duale that will militarize the operation if need be. I think that is not supported by the facts on the ground as of now, because there are things in the security sector that are not said in public. And he gets his advice normally from the professionals. So he is only alluding to, with the consent of Parliament, that will happen if the situation is unmanageable as of now. For this operation, to come back to your question, for this particular operation, the operation was initiated by the number of arms and ammunitions and the capability of the bandits on the ground. And that is why the president himself has sanctioned the operation. This was not just a regional issue by the regional commissioner or something. This was from the topmost person, that it's getting out of hand and it has to be contained. What we are hearing from the politicians here, the Waheshimiwas, is that there is a boundary issue. Yes, we know there are quite a number of factors, including corruption, ineffective governance. A lot of factors have contributed to banditry. But let's concentrate on the reality on the ground. Here, a group of bandits from different regions who have believed that they're more powerful than the security apparatus on the ground. And it has to be reinforced. One thing is unfortunate, that the local community leaders are not involved in this operation, are not participating in any way. Because without the grassroots intelligence, this operation will eventually end up like the many others that took place. But with the determination of the president and the CS, I believe eventually we have a short-term goal and long-term goal. The short-term goal at the moment is to silence the gangs, to at least prove to the bandits that there is a system in place and they are not relenting until they subdue these individuals. Do we have facts? I want just to remind you one thing. In the Western world, the most reliable thing is the intelligence. For a single thing, for any bandit or anybody of a criminal to be apprehended, investigations have to be long. You must have a sustainable evidence to convict this individual.
All right.
Roadside statements normally don't end up in any conviction. You have seen MPs being blamed for being financiers, leaders being, intimidated as people who finance. We need concrete evidence. Give the intelligence team, if they're serious, give them time, find out. Leader B or A has done these things so that prosecution can at least be achieved, convictions can be achieved without, unnecessary statements. So my belief is that we have first identified the problem. That problem exists. There are a number of factors. One thing that has been alluded by the members of parliament is the boundary issue. It doesn't matter where you live. You can move to West Pokot, to Nyeri, wherever, as long as you are maintaining peace in that region. There's a security team, there's a professional administration. Today, I can move with my camels from Garissa, come to Mwingi, and maintain the peace.
Okay.
Graze my animals there. It doesn't matter. One factor is there. When somebody says the name of this village has been changed from A to B, now that is not done by the community. It is done by the government. Who is doing it? That person is contributing to the insecurity.
Okay.
Because you don't appoint a chief. The community does not appoint a chief in a village in Turkana and call it, he doesn't appoint a Pokot chief in village in Turkana. That is done by the Office of the President. Who is doing this? That must come out clearly too.
Okay, but Captain, when you talk, before my colleague comes in, when you talk about, and of course sample the feedback from the viewers, when you talk about this entire operation, I wonder and I want to understand, in what context will these issues come in? The welfare of the security personnel, and to be specific here, the police, because the assertions and the account made by the Trans Nzoia County Governor of them exchanging armor for livestock because they need food to eat, they need logistics, they need to move around, they need to reach out to these inaccessible areas. And then you have police officials whose medical insurance today as we speak is clouded in a lot of uncertainty. They've moved from NHIF to a private insurer. They have no access as they used to do for medical attention under NHIF. I mean, even as we talk about this operation, how then do we also focus on the welfare of the personnel who are undertaking it?
Indeed, that's very important. I don't want to dwell on the past. This used to happen, soldiers and especially the GSU and officers in operation are left in a lonely place for 3 months without pay and, excuse me, without support. That was in the past. This government has created, to my knowledge, a task force to look into the welfare of the police force. On a number of occasions, this has been spoken, and a task force is still working. I think that task force is led by the former CJ Maraga. They are putting things in place. They are identifying the previous failures. But what I think I can guarantee you, if the status quo remains, the morale of those officers who will either be left there or be conducting operations will still revert back to what it was. Because you can't leave a GSU officer, deploy a platoon of GSU officers in the jungle or in hotspot, and then forget about them and expect them to perform their duties as expected. But thank God, the government has already formed a task force that's going to look into the welfare of the police officers, and I have no doubt they will be taken care of.
All right. We just want to sample some of the views that our viewers have been sharing with us on social media. And even as we do that, just very quickly from you, Mheshimiwa Ngitit, I mean, this is a problem that is affecting your people. What is the role of the leaders then in the region? Because we cannot just lay the blame on the national government. If you understand the problem, you understand the root cause, you understand the local context and how it operates, what is it that you think the leaders from those regions can do to make a difference? But even as you ponder about that, I just want us to look at what... We
should respond, but then we proceed.
All right.
Okay. As I told you, my sister, last time, we used to be aggressors. But in this one, when we were disarmed, we became victims. So now we are victims. We are waiting for the government to provide security. As for me, I'm supporting the operation. Okay. That is one. Because you cannot sit there, wait for bandits to burn schools, to burn people alive in their houses, displace people, burn police vehicles, and then you want government to come there, give them sweets, sit with them, negotiate with them. And I like there's a question you asked, and I was just laughing, like, you are asking, Honorable, if these people will vacate these areas, will the bandits sit in those bushes to wait for the operation and maybe wait for the bombs? No, the bandits will move with the populations. They will move to the safer places. So this, okay, the operation for now. What has been happening in the north is a ceasefire. Whenever there is an alarm operation comes in, then there is calm, they go back to their bases, then we go back to the usual. That's why I was saying it has to be looked into what is the main cause. Okay. You know, usually when I'm going back to the land issue, when we are pastoralists, we can go to West Pokot, graze there, then come back to our land when there is pasture. But the issue of us going to West Pokot, graze there, post chiefs there, settle there permanently, scare away West Pokot people from their residence, it becomes another issue.
But it's the office of the presidency that...
Exactly. I'm calling upon...
Then are you then bringing about, briefly, because we need to, because of time, this sample of the feedback of the viewers, are you then bringing another element of impunity within the government?
Yes. Whoever is posting chiefs to our ancestral places should be called upon to undo that.
Can I respond?
We want to...
Yes.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, I know, you are aggressors and you are expanding your land. That is the truth. And we have facts to this. We have names you have called our places. We have chiefs you've posted. We can even tell you the names of those chiefs.
Right.
And you know, the office of the president cannot do it in isolation. It is a leadership of a community that goes to that office, present like, we need a new sub-county. We have grown population, what. And then now, this one's in the office of president blindly, without going to see which is this sub-location being created, they issue a letter to the chief.
So what you're suggesting, what you're saying is that this renaming has been done officially. It's not just a nickname.
It is not a nickname.
It has been done officially.
It has been done. To an extent, chiefs are there.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you their names.
Reply to Honorable Letter before we sample the feedback.
I think I've said before that if leaders want to solve matter, the leaders will not want to throw blames. To call us aggressors, I can mention up to last week, when the military operation went recently, who are the bandits that were killed? The people that were killed were in Turkana County, and they were Turkana people, and they went to the media and say, we would not expect us to be killed by bombs.
No, so where was that raid?
Let me respond. 2, the land issue was persecuted in court and resolved in 2016, and that is for the records. And if you go to issues of renaming, because it's a pastoralist, for example, the first map was drawn by somebody called Grantham, the Muzungu, before we actually got independence. And if you look at that map, the pre-colonial map, areas like Lokichar were actually West Pokot.
You see?
They were part of Pokot. This was called Nginginat. Areas like Lorogon, for example. Earlier areas all those areas that are actually now considered Turkana were also in West Pokot. So the maps have been redrawn and drawn. So we cannot say, because today we are waking up and we will want to go to the issues of where did we start from. And if leaders continue saying is a boundary issue, we can also claim and say we were moving to this point, and this map we can present it before everybody. This map also shows that a place like Kisha was in West Pokot, but that is not what we want to go.
Thank you.
What we want to do is to solve the matter that is at hand. We do not want to reach a level where, like my sister, claim Chakwel Dam, which is in the escarpment, is in Turkana County. It's illegal.
For that matter, ceasefire, let's take a look at the feedback and what Kenyans are saying, because as well, you have been part of this discussion.
It is. If you go to Granto map.
And Engineer Lazaro says, banditry can easily be crushed by massive education empowerment and development, not military display, church thumping and public relations. When did bandits form themselves to a conversational, that's what he means, army, or government just doing PRs with the army?
We have a Samo, Turkana woman representative, is actually exposing the conflict in the north, and it's all about land and expansionist activities. This must be addressed by the government.
Reverend Harrison _K says, let the leaders in affected areas cooperate with the government and flush out all the bandits once and for all. And those families moving, please, government, give them basic commodities to avoid humanitarian crisis. God bless.
Bob Otieno Owino, the buck stops with the area representatives in the prone areas affected with banditry. If they had a goodwill of ending this menace, they could have done it without the use of military, which makes us a banana republic.
Kisui Philip says, as long as we continue to cheat people that we are fighting banditry in the North Rift without proper conceptualization, consultations and planning, those responsible for the same will continue to game the system to continue quenching their selfish goals.
Ekaru Collins, you say Cecilia has put it across the point. I have been waiting since. Issue of renaming Turkana ancestral land to current names by Pokots, and this need to be addressed by resettling them back.
And Lakitela says the drawing board can only be as good as the number of contributors in the room. Banditry is fueled with other deep-seated intents without taking into account local contributions to what has been the case decades ago. Then we'll be looking at recurring banditry events.
Okelo Mwalimu, insecurity in the north is proving to be a more complex issue than imagined. The government should employ more diplomatic ways of stemming the situation. For instance, if the issue is unemployment, how can more opportunities be created? If it is political, what's the remedy? Okelo.
SRO says bandits have effectively organized structure that runs deep within the government. They seem uncontrollable and operate with precision. I concur with Natembea's observation that the police are aware of the location in Zone A but carry out attacks in Zone B.
I can liken the Ondoa banditry operation to the one that happened in Mount Elgon. That's Nandwa Eric. In the long run, the places will be habitable, free from bandits. At first, the local community and their leaders will resist, but eventually they will appreciate the operation.
And this is from Honorable Lillian Sioe. It says the only way we can crack the insecurity and the banditry puzzle is for all of us to have the goodwill to volunteer and helpful information that will lead to resolving issues, especially those that are land-oriented. Okay, those are some of the feedback that you have sent us on the hashtag Daybreak at Citizen TV Kenya, at Ayub Abdikadir, and at Safin_Chieng. And that's what Kenyans are saying. So, Ikal, starting with your final comments and briefly, because we are 6 minutes past.
All right. No, I think for me, I agree that the deep-seated issues have to be resolved. The land issue has to come into the picture. We cannot run away from it. The militarization of the process is not going to work. But I think we've got to go deeper and ask ourselves who's facilitating this, because it goes beyond just at the very local level. Consultation has to happen. Public participation is there. And so we really have to open up the wound for us to really heal it.
Yes, Honorable. Get it.
I will stick to the land issue. The government has to restart conversation surrounding land, because even the development you people are saying, at the moment, as devolved units that we have become, we cannot access some of our areas, even for construction material. We cannot drop construction material to some places in Turkana at the moment to construct a nursery, a ECD school, because it is a disputed land. So it's not banditry as such, it is land. So we are calling upon Ministry of Land, Ministry of Interior, those who are responsible with the posting chiefs and what. And these maps of Wazungus, okay, everyone has this Mzungu. We also have a Mzungu that has drawn a map that shows the colonial boundaries of Turkana. Okay. So we cannot go into Wazungus. We can go into how long have you been in this place?
Sante.
Yes.
Yes, Captain Retired.
And about the militarization of the whole thing.
Yeah, briefly.
I think the military has to come in for a ceasefire so that we can have a conversation. But so long as we have leaders who are chest thumping on behalf of bandits, we will not achieve it. Because we have become protectors of bandits. Yes.
Yes, Captain.
I first thank the government for prioritizing banditry in this region. It has been a recurring issue. I know that it's been put as a priority. I have no doubt a resolution will be reached. Certainly, there are quite a number of factors that contribute to this problem. And with collaboration between the local community leaders and the government, I have no doubt this operation will be successful. I wish them success. Okay. And the rest, for them to catch up with the rest of Kenya, they have to cooperate and not see sinister motives behind the operation.
Thank you.
On the same breath, I urge the officers who are conducting the operation to consider the communities that are affected by this heinous problem. They need the social amenities that has been said. They need water, they need health and other social amenities. They should equally consider putting those things in place, especially the minister should be keen on those issues.
Honorable Lotte?
Well, I've got a lot of confidence with the President of the Republic of Kenya, because if you look at the North Rift, the President, the Deputy President from, the Vice President came from the North Rift, Moi, for 12 years. The President came from the North Rift for 24 years, Moi. We also got the Vice Deputy President coming from the North Rift, and now the President coming from the North Rift. So I think for me, I have a lot of confidence with what the President is doing, and I think he's got a lot of goodwill for this thing. The only thing I will ask the Cabinet Secretary is to start involving the leadership in this area so that it becomes a solution that is sought by all. Finally, I will also want to help my sisters here in terms of the issues to do with land, because if that is what they're considering as an issue, then there was a court ruling which actually delineated land between the Pokots and the Turkana. But that is not the issue, because if it was, then why do we have issues in Samburu? Why do we have issues in Laikipia? Why do we have issues in all others? It's not land issue. It is a banditry issue, which is deep-rooted with a lot of facets. So probably if they feel there is a land issue, then I think we can go to the court process. And once the court has ruled, it has ruled. We cannot be able to say anything about that. Okay. So for me, I want to say the government is going to do for this. I hate banditry. I hate being considered as a bandit, because everybody will say a Pokot is a bandit. And yet it is not true. And that's the reason why we are not even in those hot spots, because we are safe people. We are actually peaceful people. I hate it, and I want the government to crush it completely, because we do not want to become a banana republic. We want to become a country that is progressive, that we cannot be able to be counted on things such as this.
Thank you so much. Honorable Titus Lotte, Member of Parliament for Kacheliba constituency in West Pokot. We also having in studio Captain Retired Adan Sahala, Security Analyst, Honorable Cecilia Ngitit, the Turkana County Woman Representative, and Ekal Angelei, Director Friends of Lake Turkana. We appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, that's how we wrap it up right here on Daybreak, as we were talking about the security situation in the north. But of course, we will be handing it over to the next segment.
By the way, to just brief you. Up next is Willis Raburo. You know, he went for gun practice somewhere, and he will be coming up with a discussion here this Wednesday morning.
Medical issues.